Hello and welcome to the Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw, and as usual, I am over the moon.
As we get a Dalek in the room. Mick, tell him to turn the lawnmowers off.
I've got a swarm of bees behind me, I think, here, or drones. I don't know what it is.
As you can see, if you're watching at home, Michael Gannon joins us live from Ibrox, where he's battling against some lawnmowers after today's game against St Johnstone.
Aye, I was going to say so I can hear there's a humming here. It's not me, I promise. It's not me, it's humming.
You and your big flask of lentil soup creating carnage.
You're obviously at Ibrox today, Mick. I think it's the best place for us to start because Rangers St Johnstone, 3-1 victory for Rangers, but really the big talking points were off the pitch.
Aye, it was one of those days when I think we're looking at the stands as much as we're looking at the match itself. In terms of the game, it was pretty much as expected. Rangers pretty much cruised past St Johnstone team who were absolutely dreadful in the first half, a bit better second half. But yeah, events in the stands were probably the most interesting. Obviously, we've seen online in the build-up the planned walkout on 55 minutes. I think it was the Ultras group, the Union Bears, were behind it. And sure enough, they did walk out on 55 minutes. But it wasn't met with universal acclaim, that's for sure. I think a lot of the people who were left in the ground were really against it. They booed that wee section. It was just a very strange moment, really, of disharmony in the stands. So I think the vast majority of fans stayed in the ground, it's got to be said. It didn't mean that they're entirely happy with the current situation. That's true, because listen, the atmosphere today was really surreal, really weird. It was probably the quietest this place has been since COVID. I think the way I described it, my stuff was that Rangers fans giving the team the silent treatment. Mm-hmm. That Union Bears section, usually they've got a drum and they bang away and they sing away the whole 90 minutes. They were quiet. They stayed silent in protest for the whole time they were in. But the rest of the ground was also very quiet. It was very subdued, quite surreal.
Was there a lot of empty seats, Mick?
There was a good few. Do you know what? Not quite as many as I maybe thought there was going to be. Mm-hmm. I think there was probably 3,000 or 4,000 empty seats around the ground, which isn't, listen, this time of year, that's not that bad, to be honest, given the circumstances. But there was empty seats. Not en masse, not huge swathes of it though. But yeah, just a very subdued, surreal atmosphere. Like, you can tell Rangers fans are not happy with the current situation. They've fallen out of love with this team right now, and the manager's obviously seems to be beyond the point of no return. There was times, listen, 3 goals in 9 minutes in the first half lifted the mood a wee bit. There's a few wee sing-songs that broke out. Not an awful lot, right enough. Second half was pretty dire. I mean, St Johnstone pulled one back. They were better second half. It couldn't be any worse, to be honest, in the first half. But then the last half, and there was a bit of a non-event. So there was a few subdued at that point. So yeah, it was really quiet, perfunctory afternoon for a lot of people. And this protest it backfired a wee bit on that group. I don't think it looked particularly great. It didn't go down well with the rest of the place. And the thing is, it jumps out for me is that in recent weeks there's been a lot of anger with Rangers fans. I think today the biggest danger was apathy. Mm. I think sometimes that's even worse than anger, isn't it? It's like it's all a bit fed up, and not particularly enthused by everything. And it was, apathy is a big danger in these parts now. I think, especially this gap being what it is.
Do you know what I think I have to say on that? I don't think Patrick Stewart's helped. Hmm. I don't think his intervention was particularly well thought out. And you talk about the apathy. He needs to be really careful because he's obviously new in the position. And by the way, it will take him some time to find his feet, and we'll see, judge him by his actions rather than his words. But his words weren't particularly clever. I think telling a Rangers support, this Rangers support's been around for a long time. They know what they like when they see it. They know what they don't like. And there was almost a sort of sanctimonious tone about, we know best and we'll make the decisions in the best. But what you're telling the Rangers fans is that they don't know if Clement's a good manager or not. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that Rangers fans have got a wealth of experience when it comes to judging what makes a good Rangers manager. Mm-hmm. There's a statue to managerial excellence outside the stadium, and it's a permanent reminder of the standards that are required. Philippe Clement falls so short of that, it's frightening. The Rangers fans could see that for themselves. They don't really need a chief executive coming in and telling them, you're all wrong, we know what's best. I think that might have added to that sort of feeling of apathy around the place, because if the guy in charge can't see what's required and isn't prepared to make the change, then all you can do is kind of shrug your shoulders and just wait for the inevitable. And I think there's a feeling of that at Rangers. They know they're not in a title race. There's no point getting hot and bothered about whether or not you're taking 3 points against St Johnstone or not, because it doesn't matter. And I think there's a lot of that just surrounding the football club just now. There's a lot of shrugging shoulders and a feeling that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I get the feeling that the yesterday's address from Patrick Stewart was very much a kind of holding pattern, wasn't it? It was a kind of attempt to kind of buy himself a bit of time.
He used a lot of words and didn't say anything.
I think he was just trying to buy himself a bit of time. Like I said, it's quite clear the manager's gone beyond the point of no return here.
But he wouldn't. But by not coming out and saying that and agreeing with the support on this one, I think it just adds, as I said, a layer of frustration and apathy to what's already a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, I think unless he's coming out and saying, "Listen, it's time to let him go," I think there's not a lot he can really say, really, because he can't promise to give him lots of money in this window either, because he's clearly not going to be around next season. So you're not going to be handing out contracts to guys left, right, and centre in January for 2 and 3, 4 year contracts when you know the manager's in big bother. He's probably not going to be around next year.
But that's a strange one. That's a strange one, Mick. And I'll tell you for why. Because we heard Clement, I think, before the game today, it might have been after, saying that the scouting department have come to him with a list of names, and he said, "I like that one. I like that one. I like." So it's not the manager's. Ultimately, yes, if he's got a list of names, then he's the guy that says, "Yeah, make that priority number one," or whatever. But Rangers are trying to run this as two separate entities, almost, isn't it? The sort of the guys that find the players and deliver the players, and then you've got a coach who coaches the players. So in terms of would they be prepared to buy a player in January to take a long-term view, I'm not sure that whoever is in charge as the manager matters, if that's the way that they intend running their player trading model.
Yeah, I take the point, but reading the comments from the chief executive yesterday, it didn't sound like there's going to be a massive amount spent in January.
No, they're not getting any money, have they?
I think they're looking at maybe a couple of loan deals I would expect to come in. They're not going to. So it's not going to be a massive expenditure in the next few weeks. That's for sure. I find that a wee bit strange when you look back at the timeline. I think Patrick Stewart was kind of either announced or was about to be announced the kind of weekend of the Dun United draw that looked a bit end of days at that point. And I think it was due to start a few. So that was the announcement of the gig, and I think he had a few weeks before he started. And you think, well, that period, obviously things picked up a wee bit. So he might have. I think at that point in time, he must have known that I'm walking in either to no manager or having his first job being sacking a manager. Obviously, his first day was the day after the cup final when they actually played pretty well and lost in the penalties. Had done well against Spurs, and it looked like a corner had been turned a wee bit at that stage. Fast forward another 2 or 3 weeks, it's all gone to pot again. But he must have known that one of his early jobs was going to be to decide the fate of the manager. So to kick the can down the road now seems a wee bit strange to me, because things haven't got any better in the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks than it was at the time when he came out, when he was given the job.
Well, it's worse, Mick, because now
he was a goner.
Yeah, but now you've got fans actually walking out the stadium.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's got worse. The situation has deteriorated.
So there's a bit of me thinking that he's talking about doing starting a review on Monday. Well, it's now been a month in the line, and we had this even last year. There was talking about reviews and all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the. There's a lot of big decisions required at Rangers from top to bottom, but the dugout looks a pretty easy one to me. But at the same time, I can understand they might want to just give himself a bit of room to kind of sort it all out. And listen, we don't know the financial implications as well of getting rid of another management team.
But he did insist that financial consideration wouldn't be the driving factor when it comes to the manager. He said that. He's gone on record as saying that.
Yeah, but that's not something you're ever going to admit. We can't afford to sack the gaffer. Do you know what I mean? That's not something you can't ever admit in public, because it means that you want to sack him, just can't pay up. So that's not something you're going to get me off any point in time. So it's just a bit. It just seems like now that the whole club is in kind of stasis, isn't it? Just waiting to see what's next. Did the fans need to wait for this review? It's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to find out, to be told what at that point. That then the managers, what happens? He picks, like you say, it picks up. Result against Manchester United, and things start looking a bit better again. Then they go to Tynecastle and get beat, or they go to Tannadice and get beat, and it's back to square one. It just seems to me that a kind of a holding pattern that can't really be maintained.
And that's where I'm a little bit frustrated and surprised with Patrick Stewart. I think he's boxed himself in a little bit here. I think that the Rangers fans were pinning their hopes on him providing real strategic leadership at the top end of the club, being a decisive guy, being a guy that makes the investors fall in behind him rather than just facilitate their wishes. And he needs to be careful, because if he's seen as a guy much along the same lines as Stuart Robertson, who's just in there simply to do as he's told, that's not going to cut it. And I think Rangers fans were hoping that this was a proper guy, a real guy who's going to come in and drive the thing and be the kind of focal point, and the guy who makes decisions and turns round to the board, such as it is, and says to them, listen, here's the mistakes that you've made. Here's the mistakes that won't be repeated under my watch. This is how this thing changes moving forward. There's still time for that to happen. I just think he's not made a very clever start to it with the way that he handled that yesterday.
Yeah, I think he's trying to buy himself a bit of wriggle room. That might come. He's only been in the job 3 or 4 weeks, so it might get to that point. I think he's just taking a breath to give himself a bit of space to work it all out. I think, which is might end up being a very smart move if the next few weeks they do get their ducks in order and sort things out. But it's a big if at this point, so everyone's waiting to find out what the next move is, because all it is a pause. But the league's not pausing, the league's still going on, the cup's still going on, Europe's still going on. So at some point, the nettle has to be grasped.
I tell you what, it would be peak Clement. If Rangers should drop points or bring to an end Aberdeen's winless run of games at midweek at Ibrox, so Aberdeen get a win under the belt. Pete Clement then comes at Old Trafford. He'll probably go there and get a result. And then they're back to square one. What do you do with this guy? You
wouldn't bet against it, would you?
No.
Well, that's the thing. That's the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this Rangers team. But I still think when it's the run-of-the-mill stuff in this league, it's still not particularly great. I mean, you ask Rangers fans about this season. I know I always say the home record's a lot better than the away record, but the home results have been decent performances, but in the main haven't been great either. When these fans are not getting entertained on a weekly basis, there's been the odd kind of game here and there, and then especially the European games and all that stuff. Obviously, the game against Celtic last week was a high point, but a lot of time it's been pretty dull and pretty kind of painful. So something's got to change radically, really. And these wee spikes, these results that kind of spike now and again, they don't cut it in the long run. Do you know what I mean? It's not helping the overall picture. So yeah, it needs to be addressed at some stage.
You mentioned, Mick, obviously at the top that the atmosphere inside Ibrox today was quite divided, and that's the case in a lot of the comments that were being sent in, and I'll hit you guys with a few now. Rangers easy okay. I walked out today, and the booing of fans who did is absolutely disgraceful. The same fans booing are the same fans who would have been at the subway on 75. Support conditioned to be second happy clappers. This one as well.
By the way, hold on. See that point there about the gradual erosion of standards. I think it's manifest all across the club, whether it's supporters or in what parallel universe did you ever think you would exist where being 15 points behind Celtic in January in the league is not a sackable offence? And that speaks to the degrading of standards. Because that simply should not, in any circumstances, be deemed acceptable by anyone at Rangers. And yet, here we are.
This comment, Andy Cairns, though, chimes in saying, well done to the guys walking out. We don't accept second best. At least they're doing something. Other than Nancy boys booing them are a joke. You're accepting this if you sit there and stay silent. We don't stay silent. That's the other knob. Jamie Thompson kind of puts his.
Well, I disagree with that, by the way, because if this was happening at Celtic, there would be pandemonium outside in the car park right now.
There was in 2020, wasn't there?
There was.
Jamie Thompson says Patrick Stewart, support of Clermont, just confirms that there is something seriously wrong at Ibrox. We have a manager that is a complete failure and has not done nothing but take his salary and talk utter rubbish. The Rangers supporters should continue to walk out until Clermont is gone. I would like to know what all the investors think who have put their money into Rangers for the last 10 years. Rangers supporters have been put through hell. Murray, White, Green, and now this board is utter disgraceful. So
that's interesting. And I tell you what's interesting about that. There are investors. There are 3 non-executive directors on the Rangers board: Julian Waltart, George Taylor, John Halstead. The lesser spotted trio. They are simply absentee landlords. They're nowhere near it. I think Julian Waltart and George Taylor are based in the Far East. John Halstead based in the States. They are never anywhere near the actual hub, the command centre at Ibrox. They're, as I said, absentee landlords. I think that sends out a bad message. When the guys at the top are nowhere to be seen, they don't have their boots on the ground, they've got no feel for it. And that's been the case with this Rangers kind of boardroom. It's been filled. The ones that do turn up want to fight with each other and everybody else. And then you've got these guys that are obviously putting up significant numbers, but they're nowhere near it. And I think that fundamentally, if I was Patrick Stewart and I'm in charge of the next board meeting, or Fraser Thornton, the new chairman, I'm looking around the table and going, where is everybody? Did people not get the memo? Because this is Rangers in a pretty dire situation where your own customers are turning your back, putting out statements, banners against the board. This really needs to be given a hands-on approach, and yet these guys are nowhere to be seen. And I think from the top down, it sends out a horrible message.
Yeah. I think it adds to this kind of situation. It's a little bit kind of strange. These guys have put money on the table, but as well, Keith. I mean, and without this money that these guys are putting in, the club's in a bit of bother. Because I mean, again, it's January. It's a long run towards the summer when the money's not the same in terms of Europe and all that stuff. So it's a time again to put the hand in to make sure everything's ticking over till the summer. So, but beside that as well, supporters put their hand in their pocket. The vast majority of the money that's raised at this club is from the supporters' pocket.
Yep.
So it's not just. I mean, I don't quite buy this thing that they put the money in so they deserve to get immunity from criticism. It's not the money that goes in that's the problem. It's the money where it's spent. I mean, there's too much money being wasted, not enough money getting made in terms of things like this fabled transfer model, players trading model that's not got off the ground at Rangers for years. Back to the summer, letting 5 guys go for about 800 grand and all that stuff, overpaying the odds for guys that aren't good enough, and all these kind of things that are part of the major.
Handing a new contract to Clermont.
Bizarrely, to the manager. So there's a lot going on. So I think a lot of supporters think, well, they're grateful for the guys putting their hand in their pocket, but let's not forget that they put their hand in their pocket week in, week out. I think it'll be interesting on that subject. It'll be interesting, I think, in the cup tie at the weekend. So if there's 45,000 here today, maybe slightly less, next week's not in the season books, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see what the kind of crowds are for the Fraserburgh game. That could be an indicator of where things are, because that could be a really kind of quiet affair. I've mentioned the quietness here today. It's a real difficult situation, isn't it? I mean, like you say, the board are copping it left, right, and centre, and I can understand why. At the same time, they keep having to pony up. So,
if I tell you this, Michael, if Rangers fail to beat Aberdeen on Wednesday,
I thought you said fail to beat Fraserburgh there for a second.
I know. I think they'll win that one. If they fail to beat Aberdeen or lose to Aberdeen, there could be more people outside Ibrox for the Fraserburgh game than inside it.
Aye, that's a good shout. Aye.
Again, you're waiting for the next bump in the road for the manager, because it could come against Aberdeen. I know they've had a horrendous spell. I mean, talk about Jekyll and Hyde. My God, they've been completely replaced.
Astonishing.
But they're still capable. So you're waiting for the next bump in the road for the manager, and every bump now is going to be a sackable offence bump, isn't it? Because we're already beyond that stage. and the no man's land he now exists in.
And again, that's why I keep coming back to it, Mick. That's why I just don't understand the strategy to what Patrick Stewart said yesterday. Everybody knows when it's gone for a manager, and everybody knows it's gone for Clement. But he's the guy that can actually do something about it. Mm-hmm. And so, listen, I think he's got plenty of time, obviously, to redeem himself. But I'm just not sure that he's connected with the support there. I think that he's possibly taken a bad situation and made it a little bit worse.
Mm.
Yeah.
Guess time will tell. Mick, I'm conscious that they've started turning the lights out on you.
It's never a good sign, is it, when they start turning the lights out?
No, look, listen.
Orders at the bar time.
Yeah, Mick Gannon's now walking out.
Yeah.
No, look, we'll let you get up the road and get a heat, Mick. But thanks so much, as ever, for joining us on the Hotline Live.
Yeah, I definitely do walking away at this time of night. Get a bit chilly.
Cheers, Mick.
See you later, boys.
Michael Gannon there at Ibrox. Look, a couple of other comments in this, Keith, before we move on from Rangers, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
This one here, Dennis says, Keith says 3 investors never come near Ibrox. Dermot Desmond goes nowhere near Parkhead, Keith. This happens at most clubs. A couple of people saying similar, never see Dermot Desmond.
Okay, yeah, I accept that. Dermot Desmond's son is there on his behalf.
Fair point.
At every game. You've got Peter Lawwell, the chairman, there at every game. Every time, if you look at it, and it's been noted, by the way, by people within Rangers Football Club, that when they're playing Celtic, everybody's there from Celtic. They're all there, the whole chain of command. Obviously, Dermot Desmond being the example, but his son is on the board to represent him. Mm-hmm. Whereas Rangers, it's just a whole bunch of empty seats.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that that's something that is fundamentally wrong, and it'll be interesting moving forward, as to the durability of these guys. Are they there for? I mean, they've been around. They've obviously stuck their hands in their pockets. How much do they want it? Because I've been of the opinion for a while now. I mean, this is 10 years since Dave King and Paul Murray walked into the building and kind of rescued the place. They haven't moved forward in 10 years, have they? So, and it's a form of fan ownership, and that these guys are Rangers fans. They're just considerably more wealthy than most. So this is a form of fan ownership, and it just hasn't worked for one reason or another. And there's been all sorts of characters that have come in and out of the boardroom throughout that time. A lot of them, I'm sure they're all well intentioned because they're coming at it from the right place and that they care for the football club. But so many of them then it's been a conflict of egos. And mistakes, and people who think they know better, and distrust for people. That there's a feeling around the other clubs around the top flight when they go to Ibrox. There's actually not really much of a welcoming committee. When you go to the Blue Room or the director's box, there's meant to be a little bit of style and a bit of swagger, and people meeting and greeting and pressing the flesh and doing all the stuff that you do. But over this period of time, the Rangers directors, so I'm told, sort of form a little cabal in a corner, and they don't integrate. They don't go and speak to whether it's St Johnstone or Aberdeen or whoever. That tells you that they don't particularly like or trust anybody around Scottish football. Everybody's an enemy. But it's worse than that, because when they're inside their own room and there's nobody else there, well, they don't trust each other.
Yeah.
It's like watching an episode of The Traitors. They're all trying to figure out who's trying to do what to who. I actually think, and I don't know how viable this is. I do know that they're obviously businessmen from the States, Middle East, who are constantly on the lookout for the next big project football-wise, a European football club. And I've felt for some time that I think the only way that Rangers can really sort all this is a complete recalibration. And it does require a new regime and fresh thinking. Patrick Stewart might have a role to play in all that, but you just feel that as things currently stand, it's stale. It's so stale. And as we said, 10 years ago, Paul Murray, John Gilligan, Dave King. They went in and they got hold of the thing and they rescued it, and it was a rescue mission. But really, if you look back over the 10 years, what has been achieved? Rangers are going nowhere, and they need something radical and something new.
I would love to disagree with you, Keith. Just for anything else, just for a wind up. But I have to say, I do. I agree with every word you say. We could talk about Rangers all night, but I think we should maybe move on and talk about yesterday's, or in fact, the rest of the Premiership weekend. But yesterday, most importantly, so I don't know what's. Sorry, let me just freeze here, guys. I've completely befuddled my
buffering.
words. I'm trying to read the comments and getting mixed up, and I ended up reading. Anyway, yesterday, Celtic went to Ross County. They won 4-1. It wasn't straightforward though. The big talking points really been the 2 penalty calls. How did you see them?
I think I agreed with them both.
Aye.
A
lot of people say. I saw on Sports Scene last night. I think Neil McCann, for one, was saying that he thought Alistair Johnson should have been a red card, which I thought was a bit intense for the.
Well, what was the argument there? That's a clear goal scoring opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Ross County player's going to connect with the ball.
I know.
So, look, do you know what? I think they just about got it right. We'll need to recruit our resident referee at some point, have a chat with him. But no, I thought, do you know what? Ross County made a good contest of it. They're picking up a little bit of form. It's a difficult place to go. They're also getting points on the road. So that wasn't an easy venue for Celtic. And the conditions didn't help either. But, yes, it got a little bit icy or dicey when Ross County equalised from the spot through Jordan White. But this Celtic side are sort of irresistible. Kyogo's header was sensational. And once again, they get the job done. They stick another 3 points in the tank and get that little bit closer to smashing through the 100-point barrier for the season, which I predict, and I have been predicting since the start of the season, I think they'll get to.
Yeah. To be honest, though, the thing is, though, Keith, I meant to say this team, we actually checked, us and Henrik, the producer, we looked for that. We couldn't find that. I don't think you actually said that. We couldn't find it anywhere.
Well, I've said that about, I don't know how many times since. So there's been plenty of clips.
Plenty of clips. No, and just finally in Celtic, Johnny Kenny getting a run out yesterday for Celtic was a wee bit of a surprise for a lot of people. And Keogh got up front with Ida as well. It just shows that, Brendan certainly isn't resting on his laurels. He's, always looking for the,
the next big thing. Yeah. And, I think Johnny Kenny's goal scoring record in Ireland was pretty phenomenal, wasn't it? So, listen, why not give the boy a run? It does. You do look at it and you wonder: is there a bit of kind of messaging there as well that maybe January wouldn't be a bad time to look at recruitment of another striker? Mm-hmm. All this continued willy-wonky stuff around Kyogo probably clouds the issue a little bit. January's not a great window for doing serious shopping, but Celtic have kind of over the years made an art form of just bringing in maybe one or two, bedding them in, and as Brendan Rodgers has already discussed, there's a real importance on this January because there will be Champions League qualifiers in the summer. And I think in an ideal world, you'd want to get a couple that you see as, they're going to really contribute, get them in the door and get them bedded in and get them settled into that side and familiar with the sort of way of play and all the rest of it well before the Champions League qualifiers come around. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I'm sure that big day for Johnny Kenny, and maybe he's going to get a chance to stake a claim and make himself part of the argument.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in the comment section are asking if you have any update on Kieran Tierney. Keith, and it's maybe worth mentioning, he came on for Arsenal today against Man United in the FA Cup. He was only on for about 6-7 minutes, but from the little bits I saw, he looked pretty fit, looked fast, lean. But I don't suppose you have any updates that you can hit the Celtic fans with?
Not at this point, other than, as I've previously said, I don't think this is a difficult deal to do. I think that all parties, that's Celtic, Arsenal and the player, want it to happen. I really don't imagine that it's going to be too difficult to get it over the line. I would expect something. I'll put it this way: if you're sitting there on transfer deadline day still waiting for this to happen, I'd be utterly astonished.
Fair enough. This always happens, Keith, whenever I mention our loyal, fantastic, wonderful producer, Henrik. It generates a lot of comments in the comment section. He really is called Henrik.
And he's Swedish.
Henrik, we should get you on one week. That he could be the special guest.
He doesn't have dreadlocks.
He definitely doesn't.
No, his hairstyle is much more similar to the current Henrik Larsson hairstyle.
Aye, exactly. Right, the other game today, Keith, was of course Aberdeen Hearts at Pittodrie. Finished honours even, but Aberdeen's still waiting on that win. I mean, it's a remarkable run that they're on still.
Yeah, and Hearts miss a last minute penalty.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I was looking at it before we came on here, right? I genuinely don't know if I've ever seen anything like this before, and albeit Scottish football's a madhouse, but even by Scottish football standards, this is extraordinary. So Aberdeen, remember when they went to Celtic Park early in the season, the two teams were going in, somebody's had to go, but they ended up, it was a draw. So Aberdeen took 31 points at that point from the first 11 games, 31 from 33 available.
Remarkable, yeah.
Astonishing, right? Brilliant. They've played 11 games since then now, because we're at 22 games. They've taken 4 points from the 33 available in the second quarter of the season.
You mentioned that before the show started, and I thought that can't be right. That just can't be right. But
it's staggering.
It's remarkable. Aye.
I've never seen a drop off like that. It is absolutely staggering. And this is what I'm saying. It's Scottish football being Scottish football. They go to Ibrox next, don't they?
Look, you wouldn't rule it out, would you? You certainly
wouldn't. You just wouldn't, because this is a bonkers sort of environment that we live in. And as I said to you, nor would you then rule out Rangers not getting a result, fans going mental, and then Clement going down to Old Trafford and getting something there. Now, Man United have just put Arsenal out. There's no kind of logic to anything here. We've gone in through the rabbit hole where Rangers and their season is concerned, and Aberdeen's, because that is just, I mean, on no level does that compute. 31 points from 33, 4 points from 33.
You mentioned the other night, Keith, and I agree that if he'd started his Aberdeen career like this,
he'd be gone.
He'd be gone.
Yeah.
But so, and I hate asking this, right? But I do think it's kind of relevant now. If this goes on much longer, he must start to get worried.
Well, the good news for him, and Philippe Clement has the same thing. Philippe Clement's saying he's 200% certain he's not losing his job. He knows he's not losing his job.
Aye.
He's got an absolute blanket wrapped around him. And even more so following his discussions with Patrick Stewart, clearly on the Friday night.
Yeah.
That's a real good position to be in if you're a manager. And Jimmy Tilleen, he's got something really similar at Aberdeen. He knows that he deposited a load of credit in the bank over the first 11 games, and enough to make Dave Cormack feel pretty pleased with himself about the decision. Aberdeen's on the up, everything feels great. Dave Cormack will desperately want him to succeed. And you've seen already with the movement in the January sales, they're moving heavy, they're backing him hard. Clearly, they believe that they've got the right guy. He just needs a bit of extra resources, a bit of extra help, some new recruits. And by the way, they're not being slow in getting the business done. But now that they've done that, there is an onus on Jimmy Tilleen to make sure that this run comes to an end.
Yeah.
Because it can't go on indefinitely. And if it goes on 4 points from 33, well, if you extrapolate that out across what's left of the season, Aberdeen are going to be in trouble.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, forget the top six. They are dropping like a stone.
Yeah.
I don't imagine that this run will continue indefinitely. I think they've got to start turning it around at some point. And as I say, with Ibrox on the horizon, you just some things are just scripted, aren't they?
There is something about that. Now that you've said it, there is something about that fixture.
Well, it's happened before, hasn't it? It was basically the end for Michael Beale was a home game against Aberdeen.
3-1,
I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, did he not have a difficult home game against Aberdeen that caused.
Might be right,
it just feels like a fixture that, you know, Scott Brown scoring at Ibrox, just all of these elements. That just this particular fixture should carry a red flag and a health warning for Philip Clement.
Yeah. Look, the other I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. Honestly, I think I need to have a lobotomy or something. The other fixture.
Are we out for lunch or something?
Listen, no comment. Listen, I'm a professional, right? The other fixture.
Quite.
Yes, the other fixture yesterday we should talk about is Hibs Motherwell. Hibs continuing their comeback, and I mentioned to you before we come on, since I know Aberdeen were slightly on the wane at this point, but since that 3-each draw at Easter Road, when probably if Hibs hadn't, you know, taken it from that game, David Gray would have been gone. Yeah. It's mad how the fortunes of both clubs have just totally switched.
Yeah, completely. That's it. That's another crazy turnaround, isn't it? But, you know, we did say, didn't we? It was Swanee and I were sat in here one night when it was not looking particularly bright for David Gray. Kind of must have been round about the start of December. I think we said, look, do you know what? The easy thing to do now is just to pull the trigger on him. Give him at Christmas. See if he can make a difference. There was just one or two signs that they were moving in the right direction. Wow, it's been a total transformation now, hasn't it? And that just shows you what a little bit of confidence can do to a team. I think that he's got his formation right. The Cadden brothers bombing down each flank. They're a different proposition for the team that we saw at the start of the season. And I think the manager deserves credit for, you know, understanding what was wrong, what was required to turn it around, implement, putting it in place, getting his selection right, getting the balance right to the team, and they're reaping the rewards for it. So it's interesting, Dundee United as well. Who would have thought Dundee United would be going into this second half of the season, sat in third place quite comfortably, maybe even with an eye on Rangers in second. Dundee United coming up straight from the Championship. So there are some really good stories and interesting stories throughout the SPFL, or the top flight this season. But some of them are so bizarre and so unexpected. And, you know, you've got two teams coming together at Ibrox. I keep coming back to it on Wednesday. And their whole season has just been a muddle in terms of, you know, what direction are they heading in? What direction are Aberdeen heading in? Where are Rangers going?
I know. So many subplots, I know.
And when they come together, I think it's going to be fascinating. And as Michael said there, you know, with Fraserburgh in the Scottish Cup, to follow, you know, if Clement doesn't get the performance and the result that he requires against Aberdeen, I think he's heading into some really difficult times. And then, and this again, I come back to the start of Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart boxed himself in. No, we're keeping Clement. He's the man. People don't understand, and we know best. If he doesn't beat Aberdeen, if there's protests in an empty stadium for Fraserburgh, then 1 week he might be saying we're backing him, and the following week he might have to say we're sacking him.
Yeah.
And then that makes his judgment look flawed.
He's made the rod for his own back.
Yeah, and you know what, Patrick, first impressions and all that. So, you know, difficult. I think difficult times ahead for Rangers.
And just on that as well, Keith, I meant to say, when Mick mentioned this earlier about apathy, surely apathy is the one thing that Patrick Stewart should be terrified of. I mean, you know, if fans stop coming, that's the worst thing for Rangers right now.
Yeah, and the worst thing that any Rangers board can do is take it for granted, take the support for granted. Because you just end up pissing people off.
Aye, exactly.
And I think that's what it's got to a little bit with Rangers. I think that there are supporters, and, you know, as Michael was telling us, you know, some fans booing and jeering when a section of supporters planned or go through with the planned walkout. It just all feels a little bit, well, it's not a little bit, it just feels fully toxic now.
Yeah, chaotic.
And I don't think you want to, you know, we talked about Brendan Rodgers and we were having a laugh and joke about him picking a fight with that's over the minuscule minor details. This is the big picture that Rangers are having to address. What you don't want to lose, or what you don't want to do as a guy that's meant to be front of house in terms of the boardroom, is you don't want to be telling the fans that they're stupid, that they don't quite get it, that they've gone over OTT. As I said at the start, these guys know what they're watching. And what they don't need is to be told that black is white. Because that's when, whether it's apathy or anger or just they disengage, you can start to become disenfranchised. And I feel there's a real danger that that's where the vast majority of the Rangers support are right now. Just right on the verge of that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And just to sum up on it, Kaiser in the comment section says, Aberdeen versus Rangers, clash of the calamities, which I think is a good way to market it, and a nice note to end tonight's Hotline Live on, Keith. Thank you so much for everyone watching at home. Thank you for all the comments. They're still pouring in. Thanks so much. If you want to get involved in the discussion and contribute, you can do it. Tomorrow, we're back on at 6 p.m. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I just...
The grind never stops.
Yeah. Yes, well, I'll see you tomorrow, Daniel.
Excellent. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.